Welcome, sunny England. Beautiful Saturday. So this clip will be about Owen Barfield. We mentioned him briefly in another clip, but we're reading a book now called The Fellowship about the Inklings. So this group of thinkers and writers in Oxford in the 1900s, with especially Tolkien, with The Lord of the Rings and C.S. Lewis, and then Owen Barfield is the third one. He's not that famous, but he's more of a philosopher. And one of his big projects was about the evolving consciousness of history, or of human history, and how words are kind of what he called them fossils of conscious. Like a word can open up an ancient world for us, like how they were thinking in older times. And he's using a classic example. He's using is the word for spirit in Greek. It's written pneuma, so pneuma, which means both spirit and wind. So one of his main themes here is about language and the words that could give us hints or kind of spell, like really show us how they were thinking differently and experiencing the world differently. And this participation concept that he has, that in the ancient times you didn't think of the inner world and the outer world as two different things. They were more like one experience of everything. In this book we mentioned by Mark Vernon, he talked about like you can feel this in a concert sometimes. If you stand in the audience, that you lose yourself and you become just this huge waving kind of mass of people as one. And that's one way of thinking of how they might have experienced the world more in the ancient times. So, but the book, The Fellowship, is it's a great book. And there's a great biography also by Tolkien, like Lord of the Rings and the mythology there, but also Barfield and his work. Also that he kept working in Britain until in his mid-60s as a kind of not so known and kind of a little bit, it wasn't ignored, but a little bit just like pushed to the side almost, or like not seen as too complicated in many ways. But then he moved to the States in the 90s, when he was in his 60s. And then suddenly he blossomed and had this big career for over 20 years in his 70s and partly 80s. And he said he got 10 times more encouragement and support and attention and, and feedback from people in the States. So he really enjoyed his time there and also kept working with his themes about consciousness. He had one quote was that he didn't see like the last millennia as a materialistic development. It was more like the real story was more like the story of consciousness. So we can tie this into like our channel, like the topic of the ancient world and the rebirth of Dante and kind of the symbolic level, which is more a natural part of the stories and the thinking, especially through Dante. I think, again, if you start reading the comedy and if you read Mark Muse's version, the notes are really brilliant, both like the short introduction and his translation, and then 5-6 pages of explaining the references, and it teaches you not only, it gives you beauty and like a wonderful world to just explore, and it gives you references to all of the classical age and the ancient world and the Greeks and the Romans and biblical stories. But it also gradually teaches you how to think on the symbolic level, because every little like every of this 3 lines of poetry, there's kind of this enormous depth in it. So I mean, just the beginning is obvious. He's in a dark wood and is lost, and kind of in itself that's a strong metaphor. But you have other things. One of the most kind of the highlights in understanding this double level is at the end of Purgatory, when Dante and Virgil they climb to the top of the Purgatory and they come to the earthly paradise, the Garden of Eden. They stand by this river, and then there's a pageant coming on the other side with 24 elders and 4 beasts and a chariot and a griffin in front of it. And the first time you read it, you could think, oh, some medieval stuff. But then this is symbolic of Christianity. So the 24 elders are the 24 books in the Old Testament, in the Hebrew version of the Old Testament. And then the 4 beasts are the Gospels, and the chariot is the church, and the griffin is Christ, because he's a combination of man and divinity. And the griffin is a combination of an eagle and a lion as the king of the skies and king of the earth. So this is dualism. So the more you read of Dante, the more you get this symbolic level, and that's also, in some sense, ties into Owen Barfield again, like just a broader way of thinking. And this is one of the huge gifts you can get from studying more of the ancient world and learning from it, and also how, in many ways, they had a bigger way of experiencing the world and thinking, and more sophisticated also. I'm a little bit careful, but you might say in some ways it was more mature, and they worked more on the deep of the experience of life, and not just dismissing it as not the rational track. By nature that part is more of a chaos, but there are concrete things we can learn from it. And this is more what they talk about in the poetry and stories from the ancient times. So that was a little bit all over, but again, the book, The Fellowship, it's a great read, and Owen Barfield is a person he's becoming more known now, and he's just one of many thinkers that are commenting on in some ways, what we have lost a little bit that the ancient world had, and that we perhaps should look at one more time, and maybe it can give us bigger and richer and more, just more broader lives, more full of appreciation of life and joy and happiness, and just good life. So this was longer than I planned, but for those who followed here, thank you so much for watching, and have a great day.